Joe Tagging doesn't.
Stop, bro. Live.
It's on.
It's on?
Yeah.
Do they see me?
Yeah.
Okay. Shalom Aleichem to everybody. I want to introduce you to the first family learning of the year, Erev Rosh Hashanah. It's very, very special. As the guys are eating their, getting ready for their bagels and getting ready for the Koach of Teshuva from Rabbi Tarragon, I just wanted to thank, as everyone's slowly coming in, and for those people that are watching around the world. It's a very, very special time period in Yeshiva, literally Erev Rosh Hashanah. And we want to thank our sponsors, some anonymous sponsors, and also that this is the Althea Goldstein Memorial Teshuva Lecture. Grandmother of Ezra Shaul and Adam, and the Shloshim's coming up, and it's a very, very special schus for her neshama to be able to having over 30 guys, parents, their grandparents, Teshuva, and the Koach of Teshuva from Eretz Yisrael, and a special time, and it should be Ilui Althea, and Rabbi Tarragon should be coming in another 45 seconds as the guys are having their bagels and lox. Just to let the parents and grandparents know that throughout the time Rabbi Tarragon will be speaking, we will be moving the computer around so you can see your children and grandchildren. And the Mirza Hashem, you'll enjoy the powerful shir of the power of Teshuva. So the shir will start in another minute. There are drinks, there are cups. Do we know if everybody was able to see it? I know there's 6 viewers, 7 viewers or something. While we're doing it, we can definitely go around, see if Yeshua Siegel. Say hello. Looking forward to learning Torah with you, with your parents, your grandparents. Climbing from England. It's too high? Turn the screen. Oh, that's good. That's better. There you go. There we go. Lior, the burners. Okay, there we go. Right, Tarragon about to come in. There we go. Shapiro's. There we go. I would offer to wash for you, but what we're going to do is we're going to move the computer around a little bit there.
Sounds great. We're starting an introduction?
Yeah, I gave an introduction.
Okay.
People are ready to go.
Opportunity here, not just be able to learn, but be able to learn together in parallel with family members. And Yeshikoch to Rav Cutler for not only arranging this, but arranging all of the programs of the leadership program. And Yeshikoch to all those who work with him on the leadership program, the Madrichim. I'm aware of this program, Kobe Greenfield playing a role, Gabi Katz, Jonathan Berner. Who am I forgetting who played a role with this program? And everybody else. So again, meaning Baruch Hashem being in yeshiva for the years, learn a lot of Torah. And each of your family members are hopefully learning what they're learning throughout the year. Learn together leading up to a shir like this, and parallel, the climax of where you learn parallel to each other This is really a very special thing. And I encourage people to continue taking advantage of opportunities like this. And it's an honor to be able to give one of these shiurim. First one of these shiurim. And again, Yeshivat to Rav Cutler. It may be this be the first of many shiurim like this year, Mitzvah Hashem. So the topic that we're speaking about is obviously timely, the topic of Teshuva. And I think people know a lot of things about Teshuva, but very often these ideas are in a vacuum and not how the whole picture and package of Teshuva relates each of its pieces to one another. That's really what I'd like to speak about tonight. The big picture of Teshuva, impact, its significance is for accomplishing the significance, and the greater the significance is, the more we need to understand the basis that leads to this great impact. So let's begin with, used in a number of places, a great phrase, the phrase Gadol. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah tells us, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Gedola tshuva shemekarat gizar dino shel adam. Very strong statement. Tshuva has the ability to rip up the gizar din, the decision that's been made about a human being. The Gemara says later on the last line, Pasuk v'shav v'rafalo. Shav has the ability to bring refuah, to heal, to get us a path, but a path that comes from the fact that we've been healed. And this is where the Gemara in Yoma picks up on, based on the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, of the gadlut of Teshuva. And if you look at the Gemara in Yoma, second source on page 1 here, you see how many times the different Amoraim are using the same phrase, and clearly this was the Gedola Teshuva. Teshuva is a great thing. And it's great in a number of ways, and let's take a look, and we'll use some of the Makoros on pages 1, 2, 3 to appreciate what the Gemara is telling us even more. Amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina, Gedola Teshuva shemevia rifut leolam. Here the chiddush is that the refuah isn't just on an individual level. It heals the world. Rav Kook has a beautiful piece in the bottom of page 1 of Rota Teshuva, where he says that al yedei Teshuva hakol shav le'elokut. Through Teshuva, everything, the totality of the world, the godliness. Al yedei mitziut koach haTeshuva hasorer ba'olamim kulam shav hakol u'mitkasher b'mitziut hashlemut elokit. Noble about Teshuva. It's about individual people and what they do as individuals, but there's an impact beyond the individual of how the world comes to its healing. And so it's the Gemara in Yoma, Amar Rabbi Levi, Gedola Teshuva shemagat ad kisei hakavod. To bring someone all the way to the kisei hakavod. Probably the explanation of the Gemara on the top of page 2 in Sanhedrin, very famous Gemara, Rabbi Avo, Makom shabali Teshuva omdin sham tzadikim einan omdin sham. Ironically, surprisingly, Bali Teshuva come to stand somewhere that tzaddikim, people who never sinned, don't get to. Teshuva brings you closer. The Rambam elaborates on this very beautifully in Hilchos Teshuva, Perek Zayin, second source, page 2. Phrase Gedola Teshuva shemikarevet et ha'adam l'shchina. And he quotes a number of psukim how it brings us close to God. Continuing in the bold. Yesterday, the person was hated by God, disgusted. Now he's beloved as a close friend. And again, we all know that sometimes getting into a fight, sometimes distance allows for greater closeness. In Allah Zayin, the Rambam continues talking about how great Teshuva is and how yesterday he was this and today he's that. And I think the Chiddush of Allah Zayin, and it pays to take a closer look beyond the narrow ability of the Shir. In Allah Zayin, the Rambam speaks about not only how close we become to God, but the ability to call out to God and be heard. Which is a great chiddush, because based on how a person's acted, they should lose that ability. It is not only are we loved, but we have the ability now even more to be able to reach out to God and be heard. Going back to page 1 again, we're continuing. We saw Rabbi Levi, and now we're up to Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Yonatan says, Rabbi Yochanan, excuse me, 4th line. Gedola Teshuva shedocha lo tasei shebetorah. We want to elaborate on this, how it even goes against lo tasei the Torah itself mentions. Rabbi Yonatan, Gedola Teshuva shemevia et hageula. Rifut, the healing for the world. Teshuva brings beyond what it does for a person, it brings geula to the world. If we look at the bottom of page 2, the Maharal and Netivot Olam, he says this is why it's on Yom Kippur. Yovel is the day when slaves are freed. The geula for slaves is on Yom Kippur, because the Teshuva of Yom Kippur is an integral part of the geula. Continuing the Gemara on page 1 again. Reish Lakish says, Gedola tshuva shes donot nasalot kishkago. Things you did on purpose, by accident, then greater, 2 lines later, donot nasot lo kischuyot. Somehow, the things you did even on purpose can be viewed as a schut. Moving forward now, Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonatan. Gedola tshuva shemerachat, the girsa of the Bach here, yamav ushnotav shel adam. Tshuva has the ability to lengthen a person's life. And I think the girsa of the Bach, who adds the words in the letter that's in brackets here, helps us appreciate what we're talking about when we talk about a person's life becoming longer. On the simple level, it means you live more years. Shemerachat lo shnotav shel adam. But if we add the word yamav, what does it mean that we're marich his days and years? It's the same thing, no? Something different here. When a person does tshuva, their life becomes more meaningful, not just longer. Know how to take better advantage of their time. You guys about this morning. Part of tshuva is taking oneself seriously, one's time more seriously, and wanting to invest it in things that matter. And I think you see this from the girsa we have in the Gemara of what pasuk is quoted. If you look at the next line, Shenemar v'shuv rasha mirishaso, there's a bracket and there's a parentheses. To understand the bracket and parentheses, if you look at page 3, the psukim being quoted here are from Yecheskel Perek Yechet, in this parak about tshuva. When a Rasha does tshuva, he'll live and he won't die. Okay. Chav Zayin, it says something else. It's stuck almost the same introduction. Who at nafsho yichaya? So not life versus death. Life versus less than life. If you have the bracket version, the Mesoras Hashas, it's ubishuv rasha mirishaso, hu yichaya es nafsho. The pasuk of Chav Zayin. And the Maratz Chayos explains, top of page 3, that the nefesh becomes more beautiful. Yofi. Living your life in a more meaningful, beautiful way. What's being said here is that tshuva doesn't just merit person a longer life, more years. It enhances the quality of a person's life. Let's conclude this Gemara now, back on page 1, with the statement of Rabbi Meir, and here we move to the Tanoim. Tanya, Haya Rabbi Meir Omer, the source for godless tshuva is already the Tanoim. Gedola tshuva, shebishvil yachid she'asa tshuva, mochlin l'chol ha'olam kulo. Again, this universalism of tshuva. One person can do tshuva, and it can impact the whole world. We talk about our goal, our responsibility of impacting beyond ourselves. You look at page 3, the Rambam, Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Gimel, Halacha Daled, the Rambam writes, person should see himself, the world, as hanging in the balance. He does a chait, he can determine the fate of the whole world in a negative way. He can determine the fate of the whole world in a positive way. And this is the broader way the Rambam understood the famous Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Tet Zayin, the next source on page 3. Books open on Rosh Hashanah, the Tzaddik, the Rasha, the Beinoni, influence not only himself, but the whole world that lies in the balance. And the person should see himself in his decisions. And just to sharpen this point a little bit more, before we move on to the next part of the shir, the Rambam writes in the bottom of page 3 that has the Aser Shemei Tshuva to determine his fate. Last line of the Rambam. Habenoni tolinoso ad Yom Kippurim. Imasa Tshuva, if he does Tshuva, nechtam l'chaim. V'imna'av nechtam l'mita. His proactive choice of Tshuva, if not, it's mita. The Lechem Mishnah asks, why should you need Tshuva to bring you to life? Let's say you do nothing. No Tshuva, no mitzvah, no avera. So you should be still in the balance. You do Tshuva, you swing at Latov. And if not, you're done. The Lechem Mishnah says, Tshuva, this period of the year, because it's an opportunity to do Tshuva, there's a responsibility to do Tshuva. The biggest part of life is realizing what we're responsible to do at every moment. The opportunity does Tshuva, swings himself to life. And all these great impacts we've spoken about. That's the chait that decides his fate. And so we're speaking here about the gadlut of Tshuva. And I think the beginning of understanding why Tshuva is so great and what it can accomplish, the beginning of understanding this content which we'll begin looking at on page 4, we move to the second part of the shiur, the content of tshuva. And here I think it's important to distinguish between the goal of tshuva and the process of tshuva. Rav Soloveitchik distinguished by many mitzvot between the kiyum, the matara in Hebrew, versus the maaseh mitzvah. The Gemara in Yom Daf Pevav asks, what's about tshuva? Rav Yehuda answered, someone who has the opportunity to do the same thing he did in the past, once and twice, and he doesn't do it. Rav Yehuda indicated circumstance, the same type of situation as far as a woman, as far as a situation, a time, a desire. And tshuva is where a person makes the right decision in a situation where the Rambam begins describing what tshuva gemura is this way. Ezo hi tshuva gemura, zeh sheba liyado davar she'avar bo. So he had the opportunity, like he did last time, and he stops and doesn't do it. He separates himself from the avera, only because of tshuva, not out of fear, not out of failure to do it. Person has the same opportunity and stops. And the problem is we don't always have the same opportunity unless we have the opportunity. So the Rambam continues in Halacha Bet and tells us what process we go through to reach that goal that we become such a person. Let's take a look at the very important Halacha Bet. Umahi hatshuva, hu sheyazov hakotel cheto v'yasiro mimachshavto v'yigmar b'libo shelo yaseh od. And abandons chet, removes it from his thought, and makes a real decision that he's not going to do it again. V'yoyid alav yodea ta'alumot shelo yoshev l'zeh chet li'olam. And God is able to testify about him that he would never return to it again. So the definition of tshuva is where a person takes on a state where they wouldn't repeat it. Accomplish though is to get ourselves to a point where that's true, even though we don't know because we're not in that circumstance. The Rambam continues and he starts speaking about how one gets there. And this is what I find most interesting. He says, he's crying, he's giving tzedakah. He distances himself very far from the things he did wrong in the past. This distancing is very important. Sometimes we like staying close to what we did in the past so we can reconnect to it quickly and easily. And he changes his name. I'm someone else. I'm not the one who did that. It's very strange. Let's say a person really gets to a point where they wouldn't repeat the chait. Why should they be forgiven? Person does a crime. He does tshuva. He won't do it again. Doesn't mean we don't punish him for it. There's been shamat the same way. A person Mechal Shabbos. He does tshuva. He won't do it again. We don't let him off. A murderer, a terrorist. He does tshuva. He won't do it again. He's a lie detector test. We don't let him off. And if we are going to let a person off, why should his crying tzedakah, he's paying himself off? You come to Israel, your name is Kevin, you change it to Ruvain, so now, I'm not the one who did that, I get off. I understand what's bad. The Sutton can't find you. There's a name identification issue, identity, that, he's in the witness protection program. I understand what's bad. I'm not the one who did that. You're exactly the one who did that. Teshuva moves from the goal to the content is something that requires explanation. And the third aspect of tshuva I want to speak about, we spoke about its gadlut, its content. The third aspect we want to talk about is the chiddush of tshuva. But before we get there, I want to elaborate a little bit more on the bottom of page 4. Let's go back to page 4 for a second. This problem with tshuva is exactly what Chazal say bothered Adam Harishon. Chazal say this bothered Adam Harishon. Because when Adam ate from the Eitz Hadas, Hashem said to him, hey, did you eat from the Eitz Hadas? Is that how you know that you're naked? Pasuk Yud Bet, Adam says, Ha'isha shenatati imadi hi natnali min ha'etz va'ochel. He gave me to eat from the tree, va'ochel. What does the word va'ochel mean? So, it's past tense. Va'ochel makes it sound like, I will eat. V'achalti ein ksiv kan. Ela v'ochel. Achalti v'ochel. It's going to happen again. I'm not willing to make believe that the sin's going to go away. Not only did I do it, and this is another aspect of tshuva. If memela a person did tshuva and then would never repeat it again, okay. But we know that even if at that moment when a person does tshuva, they wouldn't repeat it again, most people at some point do repeat it again. Scam? Tzaddik HaKohen, Pri Tzaddik, in the bottom of page 4, there's a lengthy discussion of this feeling of Adam Arishon. The feeling that once a person has succumbed to sin, it is automatically part of who he is, and eventually it will return. Accentuate the question about the content of tshuva and trying to understand why it works. The third point, as I said, on page 5, is about the chiddush of tshuva. Again, when you look at the content and what it can accomplish, you see clearly that it's innovative, very much a surprise that it should work. And in fact, there are many sources that talk about how surprising it is that tshuva works. In Tehillim Perek Chaf Hey, there's Tov v'Yashar, for showing sinners the derech tshuva. Yerushalmi explains this more at length, and it says, Chachma, the midah of Chachma, the natural wisdom of this world, was asked, what should the punishment of a sinner be? The answer given was, Chatoyim tiradef ra'ah. People who sin should be chased by the implications of their sins. Chaim Volozhin, in his very important Sefer Nefesh HaChaim, explains, third source here on page 5, that are naturally problematic. And who eats things that are unhealthy, they're going to be unhealthy. Tshuva isn't going to change that. The person who sins, mitzad chachma, the natural implication should be suffering. Yes. Yerushalmi says, then Nevuah was asked, what should the ownership of a Hakotel be? And talks about what it says in the Torah. The Torah talks about the implications of sin. Only then HaKadosh Baruch Hu was asked, Chote ma'u onsho, and he said, Yasu tshuva v'yiskaper lo. And what you see here is that tshuva isn't something that makes natural sense. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to be mechadash. And the point is a conversation that Chazal saw as having taken place between Adam Rishon and Cain. Because as we know, page 5, Cain sinned, God punished him. Cain said to God in Pasuk Yud Gimel, so my sin is too great for me to bear. He gave him a lesser punishment. It says in Pasuk Yud Zayin, Vayetze Cain milifnei Hashem. Cain walked out from before God. What does that mean, he walked out from before God? He walked out as if he had gotten away with murder, because he walked out and he was happy, he felt that he had gotten away with something. And the Medrash said, bottom of page 5, you met Adam Arishon. Adam said to him, hey, what was your decree? What was your punishment? And he said, Asiti tshuva v'nitpasharti. And we reached some lower punishments. Hitting himself on the head, mitapech al panav, and he said, Kachi kocha shel tshuva v'ani lo yiti yodea. And I didn't realize it. Halavai, that I had some way of doing tshuva, of getting a lesser punishment. And this, continuing on page 6, is what we say in so many places about the chiddush of God showing us the way of tshuva. Like we say in Slichos, Horeita derech tshuva lebata shaveva. You've shown the way of tshuva to the rebellious daughter. The Mishari Tshuva begins in his Sefer by saying, one of the tovot that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us in this world is the ability to change. And it's not just the ability to get off a punishment. It's the ability to fix things, to fix ourselves. People's mistakes would be with them forever, without a person being able to chart a new course for themselves. And in Yecheskel, Hashem explains why he's this way. The death of a Rasha. Imechpotz berot Rasha, ki im beshuv Rasha midarko v'choya. Tefillot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is harotze b'tshuva. Tshuva is something that doesn't make sense on its own. It shouldn't work. Hashem wants us to have the opportunity, and therefore He's mechadash it. The question that we're going to address is, what's job? Whereas the Sefer Yikarim of Yosef Albo says, by tshuva we have a suffix gadol. After a person has done the avera, he's done the crime, how is it possible that tshuva should make any difference? Include this part of the shir. Tzaddik HaKohen quotes this argument and he says, this is exactly how Torah keeps us from doing tshuva. Torah tells us we're not going to be able to really change ourselves. We're not going to be able to be forgiven. Even if we're forgiven, we're just going to revert back to it anyway. change, no one can change. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the ability to change. The question is, how does it make sense? What are we tapping into? And now to start the second part of the shiur, we want to try and get a better understanding of its basis. So to summarize, Teshuva, as we saw in pages 1, 2, and 3, it accomplishes things that are amazing. It's a process through which a person becomes someone who wouldn't repeat that mistake. Changing of a name, whatever that means. But that's a huge chiddush, because why should that work? We did the crime. Now we begin in the second part of the shiur on page 7, understanding the basis of Teshuva. We're going to describe its basis, and then we're going to explain why this works. But first, the basis. Ishmael, the little baby, is thrown under the bush crying of thirst, almost dying. And it says that God hears the voice of the child and sends an angel to help, to assist Hagar and the child. God hears the cry of the child. So the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah tells us, Rabbi Yitzchak, God judges us based upon who we are at that moment. And I think that moment excludes two alternatives, as opposed to who we were in the past, be in the future. Rashi talks about the first. Rashi says, God knew that Yishmael would be the father of all the Arabs, or they would bring to the world. Why did he forgive Yishmael? Let him die. Based on who we are then, as opposed to who we may be in the future. Writes the same thing in Masechet Rosh Hashanah about Hashem, how Hashem judges us based on the present, not even knowing we might make mistakes in the future. And God, of course, knows we definitely will. The Sefer HaChinuch speaks about the flip side of this. Sefer HaChinuch says a person should be happy on Rosh Hashanah. Confidence that comes from the fact, based upon who we are today, we've done yesterday. He mentions both of these ideas. It says HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't judge by the nolad, what's going to be in the future. It connects it to a pasuk in Eov, where Eov says, or where the friends say to Eov, they were punished. But now, imzach v'yasharata, if you'll be pure and straight now, now, a favor with you, and we'll fix things for you. It's not about who we were yesterday. Yerushalmi says, it doesn't say, imzach v'yashar hayita, ein ktiv kan. Ele imzach v'yashar ata. It judges us by who we are at the moment, as opposed to the future and as opposed to the past. If you look at the top of page 8, there's really a pasuk which says this in Sefer Yechezkel. Yechezkel writes, the pasuk we saw before, Rasha ki yashav mikol chatosav, choyo yichya lo yamus, pasuk chafbet, kol pshav asher asa lo yizachru lo b'tzidkato asher asa yichya. If a person does tzidkus and then regrets the kol tzidkosav asher asa lo tizacharna b'ma'alo asher ma'alo b'chatas asher chata bam yamus. Paraklamet Gimel, similarly, it's about who we are lately. It's about who we are now. And I think this is the explanation of a very famous Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Mem Tet, where it says that if a person marries a woman on the condition that he's a tzaddik, even if he's a complete Rasha, we have reason to believe it might be Kiddushin, because at that moment, he wants to be something else. Shemehir Teshuva B'dato. A person defines themselves by who they are at the moment. It's a beautiful story in the Gemara of Daf Yud Zayin about a guy named Elazar ben Dordaya, who was a really despicable person who was involved his whole life with things that were very lowly. And at a certain point, he decided to do tshuva, and he looked for all kinds of others to help him, and he couldn't find anyone else. So he looked inside himself and cried himself to death. And a bat kol came out and said that Rebbe Elazar ben Dordaya is zocha to Olam Haba. Wow! Not only is he zocha to Olam Haba, but he's called Rebbe. And you see that some people work their whole lives to achieve high points, and some people in a moment can redefine themselves. And obviously, we don't want to rely on something momentarily. We want to work on building our whole lives. But you see from here the significance of the moment. Why? The basis of tshuva, the justification of tshuva is that God judges us by the moment. But why judge us that way? That's meaningless. Take a look at page 9. This is really the turning point of things, the halfway mark. The Sefer HaIkarim. I printed the whole piece here. I'm not going to go through it all together, but it really is a piece I recommend people taking a closer look at. But Yosef Albo, one of the famous Jewish philosophers, asked the question we saw a couple pages ago, and he gives a very lengthy answer. And he says that ultimately, and what really is important in life is who a person is. Do all kinds of things. But the question is, which actions of a person are truly indicative of who they are, of their identity? You know, people are forced to do what they believe in. Some are forced mamish. Some are pushed by a yetzer that's too strong for them. Things that are not really indicative of who they are. Tshuva make a strong statement about who we are and which actions are representative of how we see ourselves. And there's a very interesting Gemara on the top of page 8, which I think can lend support to this, top of page 10, moving forward, to this statement of Rav Yosef Albo. He himself, for those who see the piece, builds off Hatars Nedarim, that you're able to be matir and nether because you don't stand behind the nether you made. But there's a Gemara in Ksubas Daf Nun Daled which talks about how a woman is being supported by the estate of her husband. And she's not remarried, she's living off the estate. What actions separate her from the estate that she loses the support she was getting? So there's a debate. Rav Chisda says if she has sexual relations with another man, she shows she's independent of the estate. Fine. She puts on makeup, she's independent of the estate. Says, well, assumably the one who holds that's nut, that relation separates her, for sure makeup would separate her. You know what? Maybe not. It says makeup, right? That separates her. Doesn't separate her from the state. It says yatzer ansa. Maybe the relations are not really indicative of her wanting to be separated from the past of her husband and the estate. It's just she couldn't control herself. That's something a person could control. By doing it, she's shown that she wants to separate herself from the estate. There are actions that a person does that might be worse than other actions, but they're less of a statement because of decision. They're done because we're drawn towards something. Less significant objectively. Whole mind, a real decision, those actions can be more significant. Very important point that we're speaking about here, about how our actions speak of who we are. Action a person does truly expresses who they are and who they want to be. Most of us throughout our years, throughout our lives, actions that can contradict each other and their implications, that are expressive of an internal tension of who we are. Tshuva is about deciding the actions are truly expressive of who we want to be. And if we take this idea further a little bit more, the Gemara speaks about the difference between a tzaddik, a rasha, and a benoni. We'll get back to this in a second. On the last line of the Gemara, Rava says, someone like us, Rava says, we're benoni. If this is true, you're not leaving any space for anybody else, because if you're a benoni, we're all in big trouble. Because Rava lived his whole life righteously. He learned Torah, like the Gemara tells us. We know how many times his name appears in the Gemara. The Satan had to distract him for a minute in order to take his soul away. And Rava thought he was a benoni. And the truth is, we look around and we dive into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we see very, very firm, righteous people who are crying on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Do they think they're a benoni? The explanation is based on what the Gemara said right before in this Gemara. Someone who's fully devoted to God, by godly desires and intentions. A rasha, totally to the opposite direction. A benoni is someone torn between both. Benoni zev is a shoftan, a regular human being. A benoni is a person who feels impulses of good, of serving God, impulses of bad, of selfishness. And sometimes he expresses one, sometimes he expresses the other. And even if he limits the expression of the other, of the bad, so that it never expresses itself, but the impulse is still there. Or to use the words of Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, based on the pasuk that describes the creation of man with two yuds, Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama, the Shnei Yitzarim, the two yuds, Yitzer, two Yitzers, the Yitzer Tov and the Yitzer Hara. Hirsch writes, are meant to show us wherever he goes in life has these two strings tugging on him. And even when he acts based on one, it's there. Teshuva is a decision about which of these identities is the true one to reinforce and live by. Name change is very much expressive of this. Making a decision about who the real me is. One who did that. I'm not the one who did that other stuff. You did the other stuff. But the same way, a person who does something ba'ones, we don't view the action as him having done it. Two, I technically did it, but it wasn't me. What we're talking about is the identity. Actions that are connected to me are the ones can really am is. If we continue on page 11, we can now understand very well why tshuva is something focused on the heart. As we read yesterday in Shul, do we get to the second level of tshuva, v'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha, which we'll talk about later. God can only happen when a person returns to themselves, to their real identity inside. The very few. And the best translation we would give is, and you internalize. Turn to your heart reflexively. Now, going back to the top of page 11, throughout Perek Lamed, the focus is on the heart. I underline 5 times where the word leiv appears, culminating in Pasuk Yudalid, where we're told that the mitzvah isn't above or beyond you, not in the sky or it's in your mouth and in your heart. And the Ramban, because of the term beficha ubilvavcha, he concludes that the two here is true. He says, return shuvo adai b'chol levavchem, return with your whole heart. V'kiru levavchem v'al bigdechem. That's not your clothing. V'shuvu al Hashem Elokecha. There's sometimes a tendency to get caught up in the external expressions of things. Is the degree to which we can internalize things. We can feel bad in our heart. Ourselves in a clear, absolute way in and with our hearts. This concept of tshuva being focused on the heart is something the Gemara picks commentaries, especially in Chassidut, spoke about. Page 11. The Gemara in Eruvin Daf Nun Daled is speaking about this pasuk. Kikaro ve'elecha adavar ma'od beficha u'belvavcha. And Rav Yitzchak there says something very powerful. Ein matai karo tshuva close to you. Belvavcha la'asoto. When it's done through the mouth and heart. It isn't always. Depends how you choose to do it. The Baal Tanya, in many ways, after the Baal Shem Tov, the second figure of Chassidus, Maggid Mizrich, his Sefer is so important. Tanya, he begins by talking about how his Sefer, on the front page of Tanya, is going to be about this pasuk. Karo ve'elecha adavar ma'od beficha u'bilvavcha la'asoto. And he adds in bold, I put it in bold, he doesn't say it in bold, Levayer heitev, to explain well how it's very close to you. B'derech aruka, in a long and short way. Building off that Gemara in Daf Nun Daled, which says that it's close to you when it's in the mouth. The Baal Tanya said, I want to explain to you when it's close to you. Long and short way. Short way. So I believe the explanation on the bottom of page 11 here's on the page, the side. It says Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, one of the Tanoim, was walking on the road, and he got to a crossroad there, and he asked the boy, "How do I get to the city?" The boy said, "This is the long way." Which way would you go? Yeshua ben Hanania decided to take the short, long way. He got to the city very quickly, but they were doing construction. He had to turn around and go back to the crossroads. You told me it's the short way. Because I told you it's the short, long way. Short, because you get there quickly. It's long, because you don't really get there. I would have responded to this kid, but the Gemara said, if Shimon gave him a kiss on his head and said, "Wow, you're so smart." The Jewish people are very wise our kids. He said, "Why? No, wise kids." But this we knew. The Babich Rebbe, the Balatanya said, "Why is this story told to us? And why is it told to us?" And what he said is, there's two ways to do it. But it's a very long way. The short way is you change this, you change that, you change your name, you change your keeper, you change your shirt, you change your this, you change your that. And it's a very long way because you haven't dealt with any of the real core issues. That's really the shorter way. Close to you. And that's when you go through the heart. Heart is the longest and closest, shortest thing in the world to us. It's right here. It's the long way. But it's the short way. It's the close way. It's the real way when we ask the real questions about how we live our lives, our own identity, and we try to give real answers about who we want to be moving forward. And this, moving to page 12, can help us understand the great impact that Teshuva has on a person. It says, Tikatev Zot Ledor Haram Nivra Yahalelka. Created nation will praise God. The Medrash asks, all the nations have already been created. Who are we referring to here? Us. These are come before God like dead on your Yom Kippur, like people who haven't lived their life properly. And you recreate them in a new way. Or in other words, we look at Mameh B'Ferach Chavches by the Karbanos Musaf. On Ola and most of the Yom Tovim, it says, like it does by Shavuos, V'hikravtem Ola l'reach nichoach l'Hashem. Instead of V'hikravtem, it says V'asitem Ola l'reach nichoach l'Hashem. Because Rosh Hashanah is a day where a person can be Naaseh Mechadash. He can be reborn. Keep seeing sources, but where does it come from? It comes from the fact that God gives human beings, and we'll talk later about where it comes from, but God gives human beings the ability to take on new identity. Recognizing and believing in this is critical for a person not only doing tshuva, but believing in the possibility of tshuva accomplishing. Second, there's a beautiful midrash on the pasuk that Chazal understood. Shana, Tiku, Chachodesh, Shofar. It connected this to Rosh Hashanah because it says, Ba'kesel Yom Chagenu, a chag when the moon is covered. The only chag we have, the beginning of the month, is Rosh Hashanah. Tiku, Chachodesh, Shofar. That month, the shofar, when the moon is covered. The Drash darshans what all these words mean. And what it says about the word shofar is shipru ma'asechem. Actions. Shipru ma'asechem. Chodesh. Tiku v'chodesh shofar. Tichachu ma'asechem. In order for a person to improve their actions, believe that they can renew their actions. And all this is real. That Parsha Teshuva of Yecheskel we referred to a number of times, where he says, believe that you can do Teshuva. Pasuk on Aleph. Hashlichu me'alechem et kol pesheichem asher peshatem. Throw off all your sins. Leiv chadash v'ruach chadasha. A new heart. Then the pasuk we read earlier, pasuk on the bed. Ki lo echbot b'mot hamed neum Hashem Elokim v'achivu v'chiyuv. What does this mean? Medrash explains, it's not changing one's heart. In a new, original way of one's heart. You look at page 13. We all know the most important sefer written about tshuva, Shari Tshuva. He writes the whole sefer, and then at the very end, you can find it in Shari Tshuva. I recommend reading it. It's one page. He calls the Yesod HaTshuva. And he builds off Yechezkel Hanavi, and he says that the only way a person will do real tshuva, believe that it's possible to release themselves from the limitations of the past. If a person believes like Adam Arishon, who were in the past is who they're going to be in the future, what they did in the past, part of themselves that absolutely, inevitably, will be part of themselves in the future, they've already decided Meirosh that the tshuva is a charade. And the belief in the ability to be different as far as one's identity is concerned. And Rav Yitzchak Levi Miverditchev writes, second source on page 13, Medrash talks about how tshuva is about the present. V'ata ein v'ata ela tshuva. That a person believes this idea about moving forward as a new person. Words in the bottom of page 13. Yesod HaTshuva. Tzarich le'olam liot munach al hatikun shel haba. The basis of tshuva on the ability to fix the future, addled by the past. And I think this idea is deeper and more beautiful when you understand the goal of tshuva isn't becoming a new person, becoming the original person you were created as, you were created to be. Not to become something new, but to be renewed. Tshuva is where a person returns to their natural state. Shir Hashirim, the Jewish people are described as first black and later Kiyuriot Shlomo. The Medrash says, just like these cloaks, these cloths, get dirty and can be cleaned, so too the Jewish people can be cleaned from their sin. Removal of something external, of some external defacing stain. Chazal understood this as the concept of being yashar, as opposed to crooked. A straightness that's the natural state of man. On page 14, a pasuk in Kohelet writes, Levad re'ezeh matzati, asher asah Elokim et ha'adam yashar. Man made God straight. There's a natural straightness of how we're meant to live. There's a natural embedded purpose. We want to follow our natural instincts for good. Rashi writes on this pasuk, made Adam Harishon Yasha, and the cheshbonos were, the sinning, not following the way God tells us to go. God explains the change that took place in man's identity after the sin of the Yetzer Hadat. He says, in the beginning, a person was made naturally to want to do what's right. He had a choice, but his tendency was to see right as natural. The Yetzer Hadat Tov Ra is where we mix in our opinion of things, as opposed to the natural straight state. And this is why Chazal describe the Yetzer Hara as a foreign body, literally a foreign god than ourselves. Torah writes, the Tehillim write, Lo yevecho el zar v'lo tishtachav el nechar. Down to a foreign god, it seems to say twice. Maran Shabbat asks, why does it say it twice? So it says, Ezehu el zar sheyesh begufo shel adam. Who is a foreign implanted god within a person? Haviomer zeh Yetzer Hara. Or in other words, what Chazal is saying of a human being is to be straight, is to be good. We choose for ourselves to overcomplicate matters with the Yetzer Hadat. We choose to strengthen within ourselves something foreign to our natural identity. Explains the basis of forcing someone to give a get or forcing someone to offer a korban they're mechuyev to bring, even though, and the Torah writes beferish that a korban has to be brought l'ritzono. A get has to be given because you want to. So the Gemara says we beat them up until they say I want to, but they don't want to. The Rambam writes in the bottom of page 14 that the truth is a person does want to do what's right. The stubbornness, the external veneer influences keep a person from doing what's right, what's natural, their natural inclination. And he says the forcing, the kfiyah, the coercion, is just to force the external influence out to allow you to return to true natural state. Let's develop this idea a little bit more by looking at page 15 at some beautiful pieces by Rav Kook that summarize these ideas. Orot HaKodesh, Chelik Gimel. Chet ha'adam harishon shenitnaker li'atzmiyuto. Adam harishon was shenitnaker, the mechar, the zar, into his true self. Shepana l'dato shel nachash v'ibed es atzmo. A snake wanted and lost himself in the process. Allah Teshuva brura al shelat ayeka. He didn't know how to give a clear answer. Because he lost that sense of self by bowing down to a foreign god and using these gemaras. And the world sinks as people lose their true selves in the process. Building off the pasuk we have in Eicha, Mashiach Hashem. The spirit of our breathing out of our noses. What does that mean, Mashiach is Ruach HaPein? He says, Hashem is because Mashiach can remind us of the true Ani on the most basic level, the air that comes out of our own bodies that we breathe in and breathe out. Returning to one's true, deeper self. In Orot Teshuva Perek Tet, Rav Kook writes, the will that's generated by the power of tshuva, it's the deeper will of the depths of life. Lo haratzon hashitchi, ratzon, that we sometimes assume is what we really want. Because ratzon is the internal drive, the true essential power of the soul. Rav Kook writes that this is where the sadness of the world comes from. He said there's a sadness in the world, an internal sadness, because people aren't living the way they ought to be living. For their true selves, there's a redemptive, beautiful sense of realizing both levels of the word, both the emotional and the practical, or who a person is meant to be. And I think this explains, to conclude this part of the shir, explanation for the bris milah regarding the heart. If you remember and you go back, let's look back for a minute to the way tshuva is described. 9, on page 11, Dvarim Perek Lamed, back there at Pasuk Vav. God will circumcise your heart. So first of all, the Ramban writes in the bottom of page 15 that what this means is God will remove the external influences that keep us from feeling the natural impulses of good. God will remove those influences. I think what you see is that tshuva is seen not as bringing something else new and far into yourself, and not returning to yourself through some kind of lengthy, awkward, artificial path. Tshuva is removing that's taken hold, it's taken root. It's the bris milah. It's removing something getting in the way. And we don't have time to talk about this, but on page 16, the Mesilas Yesharim develops this idea based on the Gemara in Yoma, which talks about how tshuva begins with our initiative. Sanctity begins with our initiative. But God completes the process, he says. We want to be. Let's become that. Remove pieces of our heart. But we must decide which pieces are the real ones. Conclude now by bringing this all together with the second stage of tshuva. If you remember, and if you don't remember, you can go back to page 11. The first stage of tshuva was va'ashevoto el levavecho, and the second stage was vishavta ad Hashem Elokecha. How does the return to God connect to the return to ourselves, to our? So there's a beautiful idea in Judaism of how these two are connected. If you look at page 17, we created man by taking dirt from the ground and breathing into him a soul. Yitzer Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama vayipach bi'apav nishmat chayim. Our life soul into us. Whereas Rashi says the guf was from the tachtonim and the neshama was from the elyonim. That this ruach was a ruach Hashem agadol mipiv das u'tfuna. God infused part of himself inside of us. Teshuva is retuning into our true souls. It's easy to understand how doing so would bring us back to God. We need to find God in the skies above or beyond seas, because God is embedded within ourselves. Of course, but as our life soul comes from God who infuses it within us personally. Turn to our souls, our hearts and souls in a real way, eventually returning to the God of that soul. Or in the words of the Maharal, fourth source on page 17, he says, the reason tshuva is so great, it brings us to the Kisei HaKavod, as we saw. Going back to our beginnings. And our beginnings are for God's Kisei HaKavod, where he infuses the soul. Or in Rav Kook's beautiful words in the bottom of page 17, he says, when we forget the essence, we get confused, when we become unable to see the internal life inside ourselves, confusing and questions. Hatshuva Rashit, the first tshuva, that lights up the dark. Self. El shoresh nishmato. Umiyad yoshev el nishmat kol nishamot. And immediately, to God, who is the soul of all souls. Rav Kook goes on to say, any tshuva that's any other way, return to God without return to one's true self, it's a tshuva of deception, whether a person intentionally intends to deceive themselves or they are deceiving themselves. He said, Shem Hashem Lashem, that uses God's name in vain. Talking about God, if we're not coming to God through the return to the God within ourselves. And I think this explains, and we'll talk about this much more in Mitzvah Shem and Yom Kippur, the term Chazal used to describe the term of Tahara. As we know the pasuk we read in the Yom Kippur Tfilos, Ki b'yom hazeh yichaper alechem, mikol chatoteichem lefnei Hashem titharu. We know in the end of Yom of the parak we're learning where the Akiva says, and later the Tfilos where we ask Hashem, V'taher libenu liyavdecha b'emet. Isn't where we take on something new. Move, where we remove the wrong things and return to a state of purity. And this happens, Mina Taretchem, in his drasha for Shabbos Shuvah. We ultimately cleanse ourselves to God, who's above any possibility of chait. Antithesis of any possibility of chait. We're people who make a bad decision to torn this, torn that. Where do we want to be? Cleanse ourselves from the improper aspects that are part of us to the God within ourselves that's above all these things. I think essentially we say the tefillah of Elokai neshama shenatata bi tahorei, that we all have inside ourselves a soul that's pure. Tavarata, atayitzarta, atanifachta bi. What a personal intimate statement. Into me. You blow it into me. Recognition that every morning a person is infused with this Torah soul that they have the ability to reconnect with as a Torah person who is disassociating themselves, actions, impulses that are not Tahar, to realize the greatness of what we have inside ourselves and the great potential that gives us. And the commitment of Elokai Neshama is that Kol Zman Sh'Haneshama B'Kirbi, Neshama is there. Now that I recognize what it is and where it comes from, the recognition inside ourselves should inspire us to want to take advantage of that and express it. Recognition and a thanks of Moda, but in how we live our lives. Gets up in the morning and says and truly believes and internalizes and expresses of this Elokai Neshama, not only to act throughout the day, but what kind of person to be throughout the day. We conclude this year by singing Elokai Neshama. Should all guys have learned the song? Yeah. The Elokai Neshama.
Everyone was to bench, and I think there's enough locks for Rabbi Tarek to eat.
Oh, I had it. I'm a lock.
Mr. Berner, Kaim. You can.
So people should ask for pictures of learning. We're going to put pictures of your learning. You can send them to me. I will pass them forward. How about we make a group? We'll share the pictures.